So, everyone, I want to welcome Mr. Brandon here. And Brandon is an incredibly special guest who, in my opinion, in life, there's a couple people, move this remote, there's a couple people in life who really come into it and they change it massively for the better. And this is like a really special moment with this fellow because I would credit you as probably being one of the most massive catalysts in my life that I've ever had. And I mean that bottom of my heart, 100%. So a brief introduction about Brandon here. I met him at a motorcycle rally. And what ended up happening is that a couple days after this rally, when I met you with a shirt that said, "Don't stop for cops," a couple days after this rally, you had an accident. And I mean, we'll get to that and what took place and such. But it led you on a journey to effectively become a healer. And, you know, through your own trauma, you turned it into something incredibly positive. And I think that people all around the world, they deal with massive amounts of trauma. And a lot of times they succumb to, I'll call it the dark side with that trauma. Right. And for yourself, you know, I had gotten to a point in my life where I had tried almost every single thing that I could possibly think of to help my PTSD and my panic attacks and my trauma. And, you know, Brandon here actually introduced me to the concept of microdosing. In my entire life, I had been heavily against drug use. I had smoked marijuana a couple times, did not have good results, we'll put it like that for now. And psychedelics is something that I had always feared. And the concept of microdosing that Brandon introduced me to and his story of how he got there is what I really want to kind of bring for the show, for the first one, because your involvement in my life allowed me to live more and more, and it's still going this way, unbridled. Like, I'm the same person I was before, but through the use of microdosing, my ability to experience this world, there are so many weights off of my mental state that regardless of what I had tried before, I was completely unable to overcome. So I wanted you to be the first person on here, and I want to tell a little bit about your story of how you got to where you're at and include, you know, some stuff and share with people about what this really does and then how to turn into superhumans effectively.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
sounds good.
Yeah, man. Tell me a little bit about how you actually got to the point of where you're at today and what the story is that got you to be a healer.
Well, I was with you. That was probably my last ride with two legs, right? I would think. It was right before my accident when I saw you for the first time.
Yeah.
And so I went for a ride on July 8th, 2018, right? I think so. It's been almost 6 years. We were all going to Mesquamaket, 9 motorcycles. I hit road construction, was thrown from my bike, slid into a mile marker, cut my leg clean off on the side of the road, bled out, spent 6 weeks in the hospital.
They got a tourniquet on you quick, right? Belt?
I took my belt off. Yeah, my buddy Kyle and I took my belt off and tied my leg off, and then out of nowhere, a nurse in pink scrubs came running up and moved the tourniquet to the right place. Because we didn't know.
I didn't know that part of the story.
Yeah, she came out of nowhere, man. It was crazy. Like, sitting there thinking you're going to die, and all of a sudden she comes running. She's like, "I'm a trauma nurse, 12 years, in her scrubs." Comes and takes the tourniquet and puts it in the right place, pinches it, pulls it tight, and she's the one also that told the ambulance driver to pump me full of fluids to trick my heart into beating, because I had already bled out. There was my leg stopped bleeding by the time they loaded me in the ambulance.
So let me just ask real quick, like, so you come on the rally that we all went on, which you are actually in a stunt video of mine from that day that I put together.
Oh, really?
You go on this ride with everybody. And how did you crash again, though?
I hit road construction. So they were paving the highway, and there was an on-ramp, exit 90 into Mystic, and the 2 left lanes were good. The far right lane was all chewed up, and that transitional lip from the middle lane to the right lane was good pavement, and then 2 inches down was groove pavement. I couldn't see it. It was 4th of July weekend, so there's traffic everywhere. There was no signs on the highway for any road construction. Merged over to the right lane because the 6 bikes got ahead of me, and I didn't know where I was going. So I'm trying to keep line of sight of them. Moved over, just shook my handlebar.
Tank slap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And uncontrollable. Just instant, slammed me onto the ground, and then I woke up with my leg missing. Tried to stand up, had no idea my leg was missing at first. Tried to stand up a few times, fell flat on my face, looked over in the highway, my leg was sitting right there. And
Dude, what you looked over and your leg is sitting there.
That's the first time I felt pain. There was no pain in my body until then. Once my brain made the connection that was my foot, then the pain started kicking in.
I'm sorry, man. I don't want to focus super hard on this, but like,
that's all good.
What is it like looking across the way and seeing like your limb?
It was full of fear. You know, I was.
You were not in shock.
I was not in shock. I was fully aware. My friend Brendan came running over, and he ran over, and he's like, "Holy shit, your fucking leg's gone!" And I was like, "Yeah, all right, thanks."
I got that part. I saw it. I was there.
Yeah. And he ran off, and then Kyle came up, and he just sat with me, man. And I've done martial arts most of my life. I'm well aware on, breathing and heart rate. So I started meditating, and I'm a father. My son was 3 years old at the time, and that was all that was on my mind. I was like, I'm not leaving my fucking kid. So I told Kyle, I was like, hold my hand and tell me I'm getting home to my kid. We just talked. Thankfully, that nurse came running up, and she...
Random person, passenger vehicle.
Yeah, so her name's Patricia Smith. She didn't leave her name or anything. She took off after she saved my life. So after I got out of the hospital, I have this big weight on my shoulders. I'm like, I got to find this fucking lady, bro. She legitimately saved my life. I need to know her. So used Facebook for the good that it can bring, and my story was shared 3,000 times within 2 days. And then News Channel 3 came and did an interview to help try to find her, interviewed me, and then I found her the next day, and we still are in contact now. She was just as happy that I found her that I was to find her, because she was like, "Oh, I'm so glad you're alive. I didn't know if you were going to make it." So it was really cool to find her.
That's wild. So Kyle gets the tourniquet around. This lady runs over. She moves it, gets it good.
Yep.
You're going to make it home to see your son.
Yeah, well, so what's messed up is they put me in the ambulance, and I stopped bleeding at that time. So my girlfriend was with me. She was on her own bike. She turned around, came back to me. So as they're loading me in the hospital, into the ambulance, she shows up. And the ambulance driver's like, "Don't call his family. You're not allowed to call his family. We don't know if he's going to make it to the hospital. We're doing everything we can for him, but it does not look good."
Wow.
Right in front of me. I'm sitting there oh.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
I want to say something.
Yeah. So then there's no blood or painkillers on the ambulance, and the traffic was terrible. It was 4th of July weekend, so we had to wait for Lifestar to come in. And Lifestar had cloud coverage. It took them 26 minutes to get to me. And so the whole time I'm sitting there bleeding out and in pain because they had no painkillers. And
you can feel everything. It's not body shock.
No,
mentally
it's weird when your body runs out of blood. The pain is so intense. It basically felt like 2 vehicles were crushing my leg with every heartbeat, just and it was wild. So yeah, I'm just sitting there, just clinging on to life, hoping that I'm gonna make it. And then they put me in the helicopter, and I remember taking off backwards, and I was like, "Oh, that's fucking sketchy." And that was it. And then I woke up in the hospital under the lights.
You were out.
I was out. They knocked me out.
Okay.
And so I had done such a good job of cutting my leg off myself that the doctors didn't touch the bone.
I mean, if you're gonna do it right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Save some money on surgery. It was great.
Measure twice, cut once. Yeah, man. No, you did good.
Yeah. So yeah, they were like a samurai sword, cut it off. So they did nothing with the bone. I had no surgeries. I had to wait for it to heal so they can skin graft me and close it up. And Kyle always has the story where I woke up in the hospital and all my family and everybody's crying around me. And the first thing I said, I was like, "Guys, it's just a fucking leg. It's just a leg. I'm good. I'm here. We're talking. It's just a leg. We'll be all right."
That mystifies me. That mindset.
I've been riding since I was 3 years old. Shit happens. I've always been ready for something to happen. I didn't know what it would be. I remember when I had that wobble and I knew I wasn't going to control it, and it threw me from my bike. And I remember as I'm coming over the bars, I go, "Oh, well, this is it. This is the one." Because I've always known that it's a possibility. And, I consciously remember just being like, "Oh, this is the accident right here," and slam. And I think I initially knocked out, and then I came to as I'm sliding. And I don't remember. My brain definitely blocked the impact of my leg on that road sign. I just can't remember that part. But then the next thing I remember is trying to stand up, try to get to my bike. That was my first thought. I was like, gotta get my bike out of the road.
Dude, we're so stupid, man. We're so dumb. Like, our bodies falling apart. We're like, is the car okay?
Well,
like,
it's weird. So I slid on my back, but I had towels in a backpack because we were going to the beach. So I like Ninja Turtled my ass on the road. I had all my gear, boots, gloves, helmet, jacket. I had like one of those mesh jackets on. It was like 100 and something degrees out that day. So, but I remember sliding and coming to to a stop. And the first thing I did was like, oh, all right. Like, I didn't even know this shit was going. I couldn't see it. Had no clue. God. And the only thing I felt was my left elbow where I had 10 stitches. I needed 10 stitches. And that was the only thing. And I remember looking at it. I was like, we're good. Stand up, poof, fall flat on my face.
So you went to go, like, put your leg down.
Just to prop myself up. And the guy who, random, another witness, pulled over because he saw a cloud of dust. And my friends are like, you had a cooler? And he had just bought a Yeti cooler, and he was coming back from the beach, so he had all his drinks in his Yeti cooler. He dumped all his drinks, gave Brendan and Kyle the cooler. They picked the leg up, threw it in the Yeti cooler. But that witness saw the cloud of dust, and he said, the only thing he saw was me try to stand up like 3 times, fall flat on my face. And
because it's just not computing.
Yeah, I had no clue. I did not feel a thing down there. And my first thought when I went to stand back up and fall down, I was like, all right, well, I broke my leg. I had no clue it was gone. And so then the jeans are all torn and bloody. And I'm like, I look down, lift my helmet up. I'm like, oh, shit. And at that time, before we put the tourniquet on, it was like every heartbeat was like a squirt gun. It was like, so you're just sitting there watching. So I was like, fuck, I got to calm my heart rate down, meditate, breathe. And Kyle ran up, thankfully, and he just stared into my soul. And he's like, we're going to get home. And
wow.
Yeah, here I am.
We're going to get home.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, we made it, bro.
So part of your story, though, getting you to be a healer, was that you had some addiction stuff back when, and you woke up with a new nightmare.
Yeah. So prior to my accident, let's see, this New Year's I will be sober for 9 years. I've been without my leg for almost 6. So 3 years I was sober off of heroin. I had done heroin for 10 years straight. So basically from when I was 19 until 30, those 10, 11 years, there was just not a day without me partying like a rock star. I would do whatever, but it was mainly focused on opiates. Ever since I, did pills when I was like 19 years old, it was just one thing after another. And then the heroin addiction, started shot it for 10 years or so, 8 years maybe. And then one day I was sitting on the toilet in the morning and I'm feeling like shit because I didn't have my drugs. And I'm just like, man, my brother and I are like the most talented people I know. We can do anything. And here I am spending every dollar that I earn to make myself sick. And I'm like, thinking to myself about terminally ill children and how their parents would pay every dollar they can ever come up with just to have one more second with their babies. And I was like, man, I have to stop doing this to my parents. Like, I need to make them proud before they die while I have a chance still. And that day forward, I never touched heroin again. I was on methadone. The high dose, back when I was using, because it's like, if you don't have drugs, then you need to have your methadone to make sure you're not puking and shitting your brains out. So I was on a high dose, and I stayed there for a little bit, and then I found out I was having a kid, and I was like, fuck, I'm not going to just stop because I know how bad it would be. I was working full time. I was a lead fabricator and installer for a high-end countertop business, like going 14-hour days lifting 400-pound stones. Like, I couldn't stop. My boss is a Navy SEAL. Like, I had to go. Like, that was it. So I wanted to taper properly. So I made a goal, and I said by my son's 3rd birthday, I will be off of this, because I didn't want him to see me taking a medicine and asking questions or being able to understand what I was doing. So I was like, by 3 years old, I want to be done, and I want to do it right. Never want to fuck up. So I set a goal, and I dropped 10 milligrams a month for the first however long to get from 140 milligrams down to, I think, 40, 10 milligrams a month till I got to 40. Then at 40, that's when you start feeling it more. So I went 5 milligrams a month down to, I got to 20. Then I went from 20, I went 2 milligrams a month down till I was on 2. And I stayed there for 2 months, and I got off of it, walked away, and I was done like 2 months ahead of schedule. So great. I'm finally off opiates for the first time in my adult life, right? Feeling great. The cloud's starting to lift off my brain. I'm starting to feel like a fucking human again. 4 months later, I crash my bike. I wake up in the hospital on a fentanyl drip, which is,
Which just leads to being really addicted.
I was just like, fuck, man. 4 months, and here I am. So I lived in the hospital for 6 weeks on, it started fentanyl. Then they put me to Dilaudid, kept me on a Dilaudid drip. Then once I got to my rehab, I was on Oxycontin and Dilaudid pills by the handful every fucking day. And then they released me and kept me on those drugs, and 9 other pharmaceuticals. They had me on things that, they put me on SSRIs without even telling me because they were using it for nerve pain.
How are SSRIs corresponding to, like,
I guess there's one that they use that helps with nerve pain. I'm not quite sure, but when I found out, it was in rehab. It was about 4 weeks after they had already given it to me without telling me. And some awesome Indian woman, for the first time, she's popping out my drugs, and she's like, this one is for stool softener, this one is for pain, this one is for mood stabilizer. And I was like, what? Mood stabilizer? Why am I on a mood stabilizer? Like, I had been positive throughout the whole process. I cut my leg off, yeah, but I wasn't depressed or sad about it. I was like, you know what? I'm fucking dealing with it. I'm moving on. So I kept that good attitude. So for them to put me on a mood stabilizer, I was like, why would I be? And she's like, oh, well, they might be using it for nerve pain. And I was like, well, so I asked her for all of the literature on the drug, and it was like page after page after page of consult your doctor. Basically, it's like...
Right, but you can't consult your doctor. You're in a coma.
Right. Well, I wasn't in a coma.
Or
Yeah, but, they're supposed to go over these drugs and the reactions and ask questions before just putting you on them, and they did not do that. They just put me on it, and it was like, once I found out the literature, I told them, I said, I want off this immediately. And they said, no, you can't do that. And I was like, why? I'm in a hospital under 24-hour supervision. Like, check on me a little more if you think I'm going to be suicidal. Where am I going to go? Mm-hmm. I have a broken right ankle. I have no leg. Like, I'm not killing myself in this hospital bed.
Wait, so you had a broken ankle too on top of all
that?
Yeah,
I broke
so you go to stand up 3 times on a broken ankle? She's going to have to go up, honey. Yeah.
Up. I had a broken collarbone, a broken ankle, 10 stitches, and cut my leg off. So at rehab, it was like, they wouldn't let me use crutches because I was broken here.
Yep.
I couldn't use a wheelchair because I was broken, and I couldn't stand up. So what they gave is this fucking wheelchair that has like a handle on it, and it pumps, and you crank it, and you can turn it. It was actually so much fun. I was sitting there zooming through rehab, like cranking, moving around. It was a good time, but
adding horsepower.
I was a fall risk at rehab, so like it was kind of pointless. I couldn't work out. It was weird, but. What was I saying?
So basically, for yourself, I'm basically looking to learn about your journey of how you became a healer, because you woke up re-addicted.
Yes.
And then I know there was a spiral afterwards.
Yeah.
And eventually, like, leading to you wanting to work with people in this, I'll call it the neurological department,
right,
of actually healing the physical constructs of the mind, of trauma.
Yeah.
But so you're in the hospital.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm in the hospital. And then I get out of the hospital on 11 pharmaceuticals. Didn't feel like myself at all. Mm-hmm. And my first goal was, I need to get off the opiates. That was, first things first. Pharmaceuticals, Oxycontin, Dilaudid by the handful. And, I still had a broken ankle. I had a somewhat bloody nub. They skin graft both my thighs. Had to wrap it. Takes a while to heal, get everything. So I couldn't even go get a prosthetic. I got out August 18th from the hospital. I didn't go in to measure for a prosthetic until like October or so. So in that time, I'm just basically a blob. I can't really go anywhere. My poor girlfriend did such a good job taking care of me and just making sure I was comfortable and was fed. And, I couldn't really move far. It was tough for me to hop. I had a cam boot on my right foot, which is like a weird rock. So like, I don't know, it was weird. So I had to wait until I got into a prosthetic to get off the drugs, because I knew that stepping on that after being atrophied and going through all that trauma, it's going to be painful. So I wanted to make sure that I, at least if I was already on the drugs, I'm like, let me get comfortable with the leg. And then as soon as I'm in that, I'll get off. And that's what I did. I took my first steps, walked on it for a minute, and I was like, yeah, we're good. This is nothing. The pain's not that bad. Mm-hmm. And I just stopped. Luckily, I had all the knowledge of beating it from the last time. So this time I had...
When you say beating it?
Beating the addiction with, the right tools. Like last time I used methadone and tapered properly. This time I knew my addiction was shorter. So I knew my body wasn't that... It wasn't 10 years of opiate use, right?
Is that how addiction... I'm actually very ignorant when it comes to addiction in terms
The longer
of
you're on it, the more you need, the more your body gets used to all the hormone levels and everything. Your body just adapts to basically blocking off all the receptors and just loads of, fake stuff in your body. So the longer you're on it, the more your body gets used to it. So it's easier to get off a short-term use than it is 10 years, not only habitually, you're so used to a routine after being on 10 years that like just stopping and not going to your dealer is fucking hard, because you've been doing it every day for 10 years. Like that's your best friend at that point. You burned every bridge. So I was just like, you know what? I used a Suboxone instead of methadone. I took one Suboxone, which is 8 milligrams, and I cut that into multiple little pieces. And I just tapered myself off of the OxyContin and Dilaudid, and I did it like in a 2-week period. And after the 2-week period, just walked away. Then I just started slowly getting off of all of, I think I was on gabapentin, for nerves and stuff. So I had to get off that and all the other ones. And in a few months, I was completely off of all pharmaceuticals.
So a quick question, just because I want to find out, because you had mentioned in your story previous to coming on here, like your girl eventually walked away, sort of like you were in danger of losing your kid, I think.
Not
like,
losing my kid.
Not
No,
losing your
I
kid?
wasn't in danger of losing my kid. I mean, things were...
Or it was that you wanted to be a better father or something.
Yeah, things were rocky with my son's mother at one point, and like, obviously it was all new to her too. Mm-hmm. It was tough, and we didn't know where we were going. I went from having money and everything I wanted in a career to not knowing what I was going to do. All my money was quickly dwindled.
And you do roofing.
Now I do, but at the time I did high-end countertops,
yep.
like custom concrete, and so very physical. All day long, I'm huffing around 500-pound slabs of stone, carrying them upstairs, doing, you know what I mean? Like, so now I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that ever again? Mm-hmm. I'm a skilled craftsman. It's what I've always been. I've always built. Didn't know what I was going to do for money, so things got rocky for a little bit. But as far as getting into the healing thing, I got off all those drugs, and what that does is it messes with your hormones and things. It was only a few months that I was on them, but still getting off of 11 pharmaceuticals at one point when you're trying to figure out life, it's not an easy thing. Your brain is all over the place. I was using cannabis for pain and trying to deal with it, like in higher doses, FICO and RSOs.
What's an RSO?
RSO is Rick Simpson's oil. It's just very concentrated form of cannabis. They use it for cancer patients and things. It's a very high dose. It's like a little tar, and you just eat it orally. And I was taking that to beat the sleep. When you were withdrawing off opiates, it's hard to sleep at night. So okay. I would take that and just try to work it in and slowly adapt. And that's what I did. And then, I didn't work for obviously months. And then a friend of mine, well, not a friend anymore, but a friend of mine at the time when I was in the hospital, he was building beds and bed frames in his backyard, and people were buying them. And, I'm a craftsman, so I was like, bro, we can blow this up. Like, people are buying them. You want to build furniture? Like, let me help you, and let's do this together. So we started slow. We were building little things, and then with all of my connections, I got us a shop, fully furnished shop, all table saws, everything, and it blew up. We were building custom rustic furniture, bed frames, dressers from scratch. If somebody wanted something, a custom size, I would just take it and completely make it fully custom. And things were, money was coming in, things were picking up. I was like, holy shit, like this is going to be a success. And we were both recovering addicts. He had had a new daughter, and I thought he was doing great. And out of nowhere, his just self-sabotage need he ended up stealing $40,000 ish from
I remember this.
my customers and myself, and shot it up his arm and just relapsed. And so here I am, like I figured out what I'm going to do now. I don't need to go back to work. I could build furniture. I invested everything into it, got the shop, all the money, everything that I had, bought all new tools, everything. And then he went and did that. And it was just like, that's when things started spiraling in my head. And I was like, fuck, you know.
I
was
had
like,
the timeline wrong. Okay,
yeah,
go
so
ahead.
I had to start all over again, and, you know, lost everything again. And I'm like, fuck, I just figured things out. Like, I was, you know, things were good in my head. I'm like, you know, I have a shop, I have a place I could bring my kid, like, I'm gonna be all right. And then, you know, he burned all my bridges. He ruined my reputation in that realm. Like, so I was like, I just stopped. I didn't even want to try to do it on my own, because he had burned so many people that I just kept, every day I would get another message from people like, hey, have you heard from John? He took $1,000 and then blocked me. Like, what's going on? And he just kept doing it even after I let the public know, like, do not give this kid any money. He's just stealing right now. Like, completely fucked me. People kept doing it. He kept taking it. And I was like, at that point, I was just frustrated with life. I was like, what the fuck, man? All I'm doing is trying to do right every single step of the way, and I just keep getting a wrench thrown in my way. And I'm like, So I started getting really down on myself, and that's when it started spiraling negatively for probably like 6 months. And it just kept getting worse and worse. And I was more and more dependent on people emotionally. You know, my girlfriend especially, like, she and I were only together 2 months before the accident, so it was new. So she put her whole life on hold to stay in the hospital with me all the time. Came, you know, when I came back, she basically kept me in her house and just took care of me forever. And I became dependent on that mentally and physically, you know. And it was very needy, and it became toxic within myself, and I was taking it out on her. And she basically was like, listen, I know you're better than this. Like, let's stop things and get your shit together. And that was all the fire I needed. And I just stopped all the fucking woe is me bullshit. I had a pot dealer at the time, and he gave me like 1/8 of mushrooms ground up into capsules into like 0.8s, which is a little less than a gram. And I had bad experiences on psychedelics a decade prior, because I was doing LSD while doing heroin, and, you know, I had bad experiences. So I was really afraid of doing mushrooms. I'm like, you know, how is this going to fucking heal me? And at that point I was like, I have nothing else to lose.
Let
like,
me just ask a quick question before you continue. You said, I have nothing to lose. This is going to heal me. How did you get led, though, to believing that microdosing was going to heal you?
Okay. So obviously I had seen and read, you know, you hear things, like, it was just starting to trickle in about microdosing and the benefits of it. And my girlfriend Naja has 2 clients who are doctors. They're, I think, psychologists in New York. Trust them deeply. So I just reached out to them. I was like, listen, I don't want to go on pharmaceuticals. I'm losing my shit. Buddy of mine gave me mushrooms. Like, what is your opinion on this? Like, you know, you're obviously around it. You're in New York, so I know you hear about it. And they gave me a bunch of literature, and they were like, listen, I think it's a great idea. We can't obviously, like, medically say that you should do it, but in your situation, I don't see why not. And like I said, at that point, mentally, I was just like,
Ain't nothing else that's working.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be there, and I was like, you know what, I need to do something. So why not? It's either I'm gonna have a bad trip, or I'm gonna, you know, maybe it'll help. And I went to a comedy show, and I took a 0.8, and I had the time of my fucking life.
Can I just ask real quick, a 0.8? So microdosing is more like 0.1, 0.2.
Correct.
So 0.8 is right under like psychedelic levels?
Yeah, kind of. Like, things aren't melting or anything. Everything's just turned up a little bit. It wasn't an albino strain, so it's just a regular cubensis, and it was just, it's like things are a little brighter, you're a little happier, things are a little funnier. And I took it, went to a comedy show, laughed my ass off, and it was like it recharged my battery just instantly. It was like the high from the night of laughing, and which is like the first time I had laughed in a while, because I was all emo and fucking, you know, down on myself. So the laughing itself was a great experience, but to have the psilocybin in my system it was like once I reached that level of like joy, I kind of never came down from it. It was like it was very residual. And I just kept playing into it. And then like every 3 weeks or so, I was like, fuck it, I'm going to take another one. I'm going to have I'm going to have a bonfire.
Now by another one, you mean like .8?
Another .8,
okay.
yeah. I'm going to have a bonfire. And I'll do that. And I did it, and it kept elevating me. And so then at that point I was like, down the rabbit hole I go. I'm researching every day, figuring out, the best combinations, the best schedule to take them, which led me to, how I all the information I've given you. Now I do smaller doses more regularly. To
0.1, 0.2 every 2-3 days.
0.2, yeah. Just to maintain. But just the experience of the instant turnaround. It was like a month period.
Dude, when I start sharing what it did for me, the speed of recovery of like the last 20 years of absolute just mental hell, wildly fast speed-wise.
Yeah.
When I share, but go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So I felt that, and everything was good. So I just I'd say a year, I just really dabbled hard in mushrooms, the microdosing, macrodosing, going on trips in the woods, taking a couple grams, and just kind of just figuring my shit out, figuring myself out, and that's what allowed me to. It fixed my trauma. It literally felt like it rewired my brain. Like it just unplugged the bad switch and plugged in the good one, the motivation. But within that month of my girl kicking my ass, like I started microdosing, and then I just started exercising and doing healthy things, reading, and just one thing after another, just creating little healthy habits. And in a month, I was like, I felt like I was unstoppable.
Yep.
She noticed it.
Yep.
She instantly, we got back together. And since that day, it's like, I'm going on 6 years now. And since that day of us getting back together, it's been just balls to the walls, no stopping, no bullshit, no crying, none of that. Like, just, it fixed me, man. It was the swift kick in the ass between her saying, get your shit together, and taking that first microdose. It was instant. And so, I dabbled down the whole psychedelic thing, because it's more than mushrooms. Mushrooms are the one that I give all the credit to for creating those habits and fixing that little switch in my brain to make me look at things differently. But then, I found ketamine therapy and DMT,
which is becoming bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's becoming huge. And I've had awesome results with that too.
You've done ketamine?
Yeah, multiple times.
What exactly does that do?
It's so hard to put into words.
They do macro dosing, if my understanding is correct, in like a controlled environment. They have a psychologist with you.
I don't do it that way.
Oh,
yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah. No, the last thing I want to do is a psychedelic with someone on a clipboard in a room of strangers. That's just not for me.
Okay.
Not to say that isn't beneficial to certain people, but me personally,
you're more like an introspective.
I want to be out in nature. I have full control of my faculties. I probably have more experience and knowledge in that realm than the doctors with the clipboard in that room.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because all of your evidence for what you do is, it's self-learned. It's not in a book.
It's not in a book. Not in a book that's powered by big pharma. These things are bad for business for doctors.
Yeah, it's very bad.
It's bad for business.
That's probably why Richard Nixon launched one of the original wars on drugs.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't get people conscripted for the
people that are
military.
Healing themselves is really bad for business. If I can go and take a spore of mushrooms, throw it in my yard for $10, and I have medicine for a year, that is now, I don't need your SSRIs. I don't need your Xanax. I don't need your Zoloft. I don't need any of that. It creates healthy habits. It teaches you it puts things into perspective. I'm that guy now. I stop and I smell the roses and I appreciate everything around me. I find beauty. I'm like, oh my God, the moon. Like, I get consumed by the natural beauty around me. And like, that's what fills my cup now. What these psychedelics have done for me is realize that 99% of the things that I used to complain about are first world problems.
It's just noise.
Just fucking noise. And my first trip on DMT,
was this the snake one?
The snake one, man.
Tell us about that.
All right. So I had never done it. I did all the research possible. I had it for like 3 months sitting there staring me in the face, and I was too much of a pussy to do it. And so then I finally got the courage, was ready, and I did it. And it was like I was welcomed and embraced with love, and I was wrapped up by a snake that was like kind of like the Beetlejuice snake, but it was red and black, and it just held me, and it just like repeatedly told me not to sweat the small stuff, just like let go of the bullshit. Just, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant, right? And as soon as it released me, it just released me into like a black nothingness, and I'm just there. And it was like I was a dandelion, just poof, into a billion particles, and then put back together. And from that moment, like it just, I felt like I was reassembled properly. Like all of the pieces were put back into the right place, and it instantly changed my perspective on life. Instantly. There was, my friends were so sick of me talking about it. I was like, guys,
The DMT trip.
the DMT trip.
Right.
I was like, this, it blew my mind, and it just made me so comfortable in myself, and made me just comfortable in the life I was living and the path that I was going. And really just not to sweat the small stuff. It was such a valuable insight for me to just cling on to, you know. Anytime something stupid would happen, I'd be like, I can't control it. What the fuck's the point? There's no point in me stressing over it. There's only so much bandwidth in my brain. Why am I going to waste it on that nonsense?
So I want to interject real quick.
Yeah.
Because my experience, now I've never tripped like you were describing. The most I ever did was 1 gram of mushrooms, like in my past. Personally, you know about that experience. I'm going to leave that alone for right now. But what I have found is what you're describing right now in terms of not sweating the small stuff. We tell ourselves that cognitively at all times. People know about positive thinking. They know about trying to have like a better disposition in life. They know about focusing on the things that they control and they not. We tell ourselves these things constantly, but it doesn't appear to compute. Not, at least not for me and many people which I speak to. But what seems to be irreplaceable, at least at this point in my life, is the psychedelics. And again, my only experience is really just microdosing. Really haven't touched anything else. But my experience of microdosing and that 1 gram trial that I did is that the things of which I already knew, which is don't sweat the small stuff. Like if your iPhone doesn't work, like, dude, there's a kid licking a puddle somewhere else in this world, right? Okay, I don't have problems compared to, you know, certain circumstances. But what psychedelics appear to do is instead of simply being consciously aware of something, it appears that it also seems to compute. And it's as simple as like if something happens and people are like, you know what, it did happen, but there is more to life. You can tell that to anybody. But the fact of the matter is that it almost allows for the actual words to imprint on the soul, the mind, the neurons, the physical neurons of the brain. I don't know how it does it, but it appears to allow you to grow almost as if you have, I'll say, meditated on the subject for months at a time. And the change, the positive change of which you want to elicit within yourself simply appears to just, you know what, that's a better way of life. Click, it's done, and you're able to move on your path. And I use the term superhuman because what you're describing about not caring about anything that you don't have control over, that would be so freeing if magically the entire world, I mean, there's a serenity prayer about it, right?
Yeah.
That magically people around the world would stop caring about dumb shit in their lives.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is that typically it comes with vast amounts of repetitions to even get through the tip of the iceberg for somebody to even agree that, you know what, I'm really trying on it, I'm really working on it. Psychedelics seem to just, they flick a switch, and it appears to be in a positive fashion when used responsibly.
Right.
Because that's a big part of this.
The biggest part of it.
Using it responsibly.
Yeah, appreciating it as a medicine and not abusing it. You know, that's the biggest thing. And controlling your environment when doing it. You know, I personally like to sacrifice for the medicine when I know, like, I don't just decide, hey, I'm going to go eat an eighth of mushrooms tonight. I never do that. I find that to be irresponsible. I like to plan. Most of the time I trip is around the full moon. I like to reset with the cycle of the moon. The moon's energy is real, and I like to, first of all, every time I've ever tripped underneath the moon has been the most enlightening experience. If I'm in a room or if I'm doing something, like, it's just not the same. If I lay under the moon with some drum and bass or some random music with no lyrics and I just stare at the moon.
Lyrics are dangerous.
Lyrics
you
are
have
so
mentioned.
dangerous, bro. Yeah, one word can just send your brain down a spiral and ruin your entire night.
I experienced that just on the 1 gram that I was on.
Yeah.
And the nature show that Nicole put on for me to calm me down when I was really freaking out. Everything was calm in the nature show. Everything was fine. I was not even in the room at the moment of this happening. But all that happened was a tone change in the nature documentary of which was playing. And it went from like this like really positive kind of like uplifting, birds are flying around and they're doing something about the birds. But the documentary had changed to, I believe it was like a lioness stalking prey, and they made it like a predator tone, if you will. And it was almost along the lines of like,
it was
like
narrating.
a dark cloud is moving in, and my entire environment within my mind changed so drastically. Like, again, first experience, definitely not doing that.
I know how that goes over there, buddy. I've had almost that exact experience.
Well, you're sitting there cooking DMT, fella. Like, you've had a lot of experiences.
No, we had the exact same thing happen with one of his exes watching a nature documentary, and then swapped over to like hunting prey, and she was just like freaking out the entire time.
And here's the danger side to it. Because everything is anecdotal, right? Got that word right? They told me I did that word wrong the first time. I don't even remember how I said it wrong because you taught me so well to say it right.
Antidotal.
Antidotal?
Yeah,
Antidotal. Like, I have only experiences from that side of an understanding. And the fact of the matter is that when you look things up on the internet, you're going to find everything from like absolute nightmare level trips to absolutely like enlightening moments of changing life. Yeah, right? I don't know if that came through the microphone. But the other side is like you're going to have absolutely like utopian views and everything in between. But what a lot of people don't talk about is controlling one's environment to make sure that you are using this for a medicinal purpose and not, I'll even liken this to, aspirin or something along the lines. Like you take 1 or 2, like you're going to cure your headache. You take 50 of them, I don't know what happens to you.
It could be water.
Right, you can drown. You drink too much water.
You drink a half a gallon of water a day, you're great. You drink 5 gallons of water, you're killing yourself.
Right, so it's like when it comes to psychedelics, that realm, I have read some absolutely nightmarish stuff. And for me personally, I was probably very ill prepared to give that 1 gram a shot. And, if I were to ever try anything again, it would be with you because I will understand and have a caretaker. But I went to a very dark place very fast. My anxiety went through the roof. It could have ended up a very potentially dangerous situation for me. Yeah. Because when you are messing with things that are altering your mind, the fact of the matter is that you are no longer in the driver's seat because your actual reality is morphing to a point of you are in delusion if indeed it goes to certain places. And not understanding how to control your environment or warm up and I'll say procure what you're going to do and why, and maybe an area of which you want to heal, and or at least very much being in a safe environment when somebody knows how to bring you out of a bad trip, if indeed it turns that way. Cleaning your body, my understanding, drinking alcohol on it is bad. Taking lithium while doing it can lead to seizures.
Yeah.
Like
SSRIs as well.
Yeah, this is not something that I am saying, hey, everybody should do. This is just something that I am saying, hey, this happened to work for me. I'm not condoning anything. I'm just sharing some stories here. But microdosing for me changed my life so drastically in such a short period of time. It almost doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And so to give everybody a little bit of a background for myself, I have dealt with serious amounts of trauma in my life, and it's not limited to one thing, some of which I'm not necessarily going to get into on this podcast right now, but I had an ex-girlfriend of mine get crushed in a car, like basically in front of me. I can't get her out of that car. Her face, had a burn on it. Her hips are broken out of socket. Like, it was just an immensely terrible experience. And that, coupled with a whole bunch of other things of which have taken place, whether near-death experiences or, issues at home or just drama in general or people dying. I mean, my cousin hung himself in a garage. My other cousin, drugs. This one, drugs. That one, drug. Like, I've experienced a lot of loss in life. I have had some form of, we'll call them spiritual abilities, if you will. I've had out-of-body experiences. I have seen, I guess you'd call them spirits or shadow people or all of these different things that, like, you have nobody to talk to about them. And so you sit there and you feel nuts, but you're not. You're very cognitively aware at different things of which you experience. I mean, the first girl I ever kissed, first girl who was my first for a bunch of things, she's sitting on the back of a car. Guy in the car drives off, and literally she falls off, nails her head on the ground. Her head opened, like her parts of her brain, like went on the ground. Like, dude, like there's just been so many experiences I've had that have gotten me to the point of having these severe PTSD moments. And my girlfriend specifically, nobody understands what you're going through unless they are intimately involved with you. From the outside, and I've said this before, I know what my life looks like. My life looks like I'm a wild motorcycle guy who's successful, who has this cool car, who like does all these kinds of things, runs businesses, makes a lot of money, on and so forth. And behind closed doors, there's like a hell on earth that I had experienced for 15, 20 years. And, the only people who really saw it were those closest or women that I was dating. And it would be, I would get to a point where something minor could set off, and it would be like this absolute drastic lowering of the amount of stimulus required to elicit a response. And the response would just be this absolute sheer panic, just tingles up and down my arm. I couldn't go to public places. I would function just enough to make money and put on a face to go out in public. And behind closed doors, I'd be holding the wall, trying to hold myself up, trying to breathe, taking bathroom breaks and standing over the toilet, like peeing and hyperventilating, like, and I lived like this for many years, and I tried all different types of stuff to heal. And the thing is, people who sit here and they listen to stories, I will never understand what it is like to look across the way like you did and see your leg lying on the side of the highway. I am never going to experience that. I hope. All right.
Yes, exactly.
Still young,
yeah.
but it's not really a life goal.
Yeah.
But I will never experience that. You did. You can tell me all about it, but I will not know actually what that was like, because number one, I am not you, and I'm not intimately involved in you. We don't hang out every single day. When I talk about this, it was so much worse than I can actually describe. I would wake up at night with night terrors where I am screaming. And to be honest, still happens from time to time. I'm not 100% healed. I'm not completely out of the woods. I'm just at a point where, like, you'll never know about it anymore. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I've woken up and my heart is moving in a way that doesn't actually make physical sense, because the slamming of the heart coming through the shirt, I turn on, and one of my ex-girlfriend's witnesses, she's like, do we have to go to a hospital? I'm like, no, this just happens. She's like, this doesn't happen. And you could run as hard as you want. Your heart won't do that. I've collapsed on stairs before, like wrestles with suicide. Dude, I have videos that one day I wanted to share with people that I shot of myself when I would have nights where it logically made sense to just take my life. Like, that is what I lived in while fighting endlessly to try to become successful. And nothing worked. I could only find things, and God, I can't imagine what people experience from war.
Right.
But I could only find things that would mitigate the problem only. It would allow me to function enough to kind of make money and then go back to bed. Like I would sometimes be in bed till like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 o'clock at night, but I was a high income earner. And everybody wanted to be like Josh Kekak. And I'm like, no, you don't. No, you do not. Like, and I would go out and I'd meet with a client. I'd pull myself together on like tons of caffeine or tons of stuff just so I could function for this short area in the day, maybe. And then maybe I'd have to be reclusive for the next few days. I'd have to pull myself together. I couldn't have people call me sometimes because I couldn't answer the phone. I would have to call them on my time when I am okay. I was incapable of making plans that I could hold to. And what people don't get is I just got out of this, like, give or take about 2 years ago. I started making heavy progress with EMDR, which is a type of therapy, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I had been to 16 plus therapists in my life. I had been on all SSRIs like Lamictal, Depakote, lithium, Seroquel, venlafaxine, Remeron, Abilify. I don't know, man. Like, I had been on a lot of them. I had tried eating differently. I had tried ice baths. I had tried breathing, pranayama, meditation, hot. It's kind of like think of it like an Indian sweat lodge, kind of like a hot heat thing. I had tried changing diet severely, acupuncture, guided meditation. Like, nothing actually worked to fix the problem. It only got me to a functional standpoint. And I would like hide away from things that would stress me out. And then you introduced me to microdosing.
Yeah. Then an illegal Schedule 1 plant that's grown.
Right.
Is what?
An illegal Schedule 1 plant that is growing.
That you can't overdose on.
Like, that's someone's backyard.
The safest drug in the world to take. Yeah. That thing. That's Scheduled 1. Doesn't that make sense?
Right. So you introduced me to the concept of giving this thing a shot that I had been against my entire life, that had been villainized and demonized by our society, and everything of which is totally against this taking place. And this leads back to the original reason for this podcast, because I had written something one night to an ex-girlfriend of mine about the mental hell that I was in, and just constantly feeling like I'm being harassed by demons in the night and like all this kinds of stuff, and I can't think right, and I can't function, and my heart is jumping on me. This is the 5th time I've woken up tonight, and I was like, if I ever find a remedy for this, and I will, I was like, I will share this with the world, and I will try to help as many people as I can to rid themselves of this, because if there are people living like I am living right now, these are people who are absentee in their lives for the things of which they want to accomplish. These people are absentee probably from their children's lives. These people cannot hold a job of any esteem. They cannot function. And for me, being a high-income earner, at least for me, I had money to throw at my problems. You take my problems and you put them on somebody who doesn't have the financial means necessary to get the help that they need via therapists and, quality food, because we already know that the food affects brain chemicals.
Totally.
I promised that I would 100% try to get this out, and that is why you were the first person on this podcast. You introduced me to microdosing. The first night, and look, maybe I'm a bad example of this because some people don't get responses as fast. The first night of me taking a microdose, which was I believe a 0.2, and then it was mixed with like lion's mane, it was like a capsule type thing. The first night that I took it, I went to sleep. I didn't sleep any longer than I typically do, and for the record, I would typically spend 11 hours plus in bed. Because I would be so in and out of sleeping all night long. I would have constant night terrors, waking up, so all this shit. I actually started microdosing this year. The first night, I woke up the next day, and I opened my eyes, and I was like, holy crap, I must have slept really long. I looked around, and it was like, I forgot what time it was. I think it was like 9:45. But that was early for me. I think it was really early in the morning. And I was like, I actually feel like really rested right now. I was like, I wonder if that's just in my head. And then I didn't take it that night, because my understanding is psilocybin has like a half-life. I didn't take it that night. Didn't take it the next day. I took it again the day after. And the same thing happened. But it didn't drop off 100% in between either. I still gained the ability to sleep better. But the night when I took it again, the same thing happened where I woke up and I was like, what? What is happening? I feel, is this what people feel when they go to sleep? Is this what normal people feel? Fuck, I was normal. I was like, is this what people feel? And, you know, I started to experiment with like taking a little bit of a different amount of the microdose. I would go up to a 0.4, a 0.6, point this, point that, just trying to see like what is the threshold where I even start to experience like some form of a psychedelic effect. And, you know, there's so many details I could share here. But the main thing that I want to share is that for me, with my body weight or the way my body works and such, it appears that I can go up to somewhere around like a 0.5, 0.6 without really starting to experience anything. Anything beyond that, I just don't think I'm necessarily going to be dabbling with, you know, right now.
Yeah.
Because I did try, like I said, a gram, and I did a gram of actual mushrooms. And the effects were far different than what I was experiencing on the microdosing, very much so, which you are aware of that story. But the thing is, and what I really want to drive across for anybody struggling with something, I understand that this is illegal, and I get that, and I'm not condoning illegal behavior, I'm not condoning all this kind of stuff, but I gotta say, I think you should start researching this. Because what I can say, I started it this year, several months ago, and I am at a point where my life, I would say it has probably had the same effects as if I am 10 years in the future of like heavy trauma therapy and taking perfect care of myself with a perfect diet, sleeping every day. I would assume that I was 10 years more healed. Because obviously I had gotten, you know, some steps down by taking care of myself and such, but the vast majority of days were still some form of a slogfest, and I would have to put on a smile for people. Now what I experience, my confidence went through the roof. Not necessarily do I think that psilocybin caused confidence, but I've always been a high-functioning person potentially, but I've always been held back by tons of weight. My confidence is through the roof. I woke up yesterday at 6 in the morning.
That's unheard of for you.
That is absolutely unheard. Yeah, you could say wow. You could say wow. I woke up at 6 in the morning yesterday. I woke up, I think, at like 8 o'clock the day before, 7:45 the day before. My girlfriend is blown away at like, I made coffee for her the other morning. I was up before her. She gets up at, and I was like, used to talk shit. I'm like, you wake up at 6:59, and she's, well, 7, but she, 6:59. But anyway,
yeah, you've never made it to a Cars and Coffee because, you know, you're
I know, now
like
I can
crazy.
make it to a Cars and Coffee and actually look like a functioning human being. Like, that's really wild to me. I woke up, I made her coffee. Never in our relationship have I been able to do that. I've not done it one time. I did it yesterday morning. I have never been able to do that. So I'm waking up in the morning, I'm sleeping, and I'm actually sleeping less than I used to, but the quality of sleep has got to be wildly better.
Yeah, experiencing REM for the first time ever.
Maybe?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what I didn't experience before. I used to use one of those Aura rings, but it would be white, which basically means constant wake-ups throughout the night, like 12, 15 wake-ups in a night. Like, how good are you sleeping? And so the confidence is up because I feel so much more capable. And the interesting thing is that in the time since I started microdosing, I have launched effectively 2 companies. Like this has been a concept I wanted to do for, 5 years? And I haven't been able to necessarily...
Yeah, I mean, I've known you for like 2 now, and it's always been a topic.
It's always been a topic, but it never goes anywhere.
Yeah.
I just talk about it, and it doesn't happen because I can't function enough to make it happen. So this is happening. My ability to handle stress is unfathomably better because one of the biggest indicators for success and metrics of which to do in life, you have to be able to experience stress and table it and still make the right decisions, regardless that everything is on your shoulders and you have nobody to go to for guidance. If you're at the head of a company, you cannot run a company if you cannot handle stress.
Nope. Got to come in clutch.
Yeah. And everything's on you, and everybody's always mad at you. Everything's always your fault, and everybody leaves you if it falls apart, but your life falls apart if the company falls apart. That's my ability to handle and maintain stress and handle interpersonal relationships and communicate is way up. And you know, it's there. Again, I talked when I was introducing you that like you are literally somebody who absolutely changed my life, and you were very therapeutically available from just a conversation standpoint. And the other thing, not only has this been able to build for me this, it's not even building anything, it just removed the shackles.
The bullshit.
Yeah. My view on trauma and anxiety and PTSD and all of these mental issues, I don't want to go as far to say like name everything and be like this will cure everything, but my view on the mental problems and the health of our society has vastly changed based upon microdosing, because if anybody had money to fix their problems, it was me. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, without exaggeration, trying to fix this problem.
I believe it. Throughout
the last 20 years, going to specialists all over the place, willing to fly myself to different states, trying like anything. I didn't care. I forgot the name of the supplement upstairs I even tried, but like I tried everything I could. Most people don't have hundreds of thousands of dollars to spend on something, and this is so cheap.
Yep.
It's like $50 a month or something, like to procure this, and you got to be careful where you get it from, because you know, I mean, you could get anything laced with anything. Like mine comes from like a specific farm that is they basically curate it and such, and they give it to a guy. He does it into like these microdosing pieces. So you got to be very careful about what you're doing, kids, okay? But for me to have spent all that money and gotten zero return, effectively, maybe 5-10% better, where I was functional, that's not healing. That is, my view on it has changed to, I actually believe now at this point that the mental issues of which we deal with are physical to a biochemical standpoint, and probably from a neuroplastic standpoint, I think they're completely, we're going about it the wrong way. You can only tell someone so much to think positively. You can only meditate so much. You can only have so much woo-woo stuff that rocks are going to cure people and all this, hold this in your hand or pray or do this or that. Look, man, I'm a proponent that if you believe something, great, man. Placebo is a hell of a drug. But there is, from what I have experienced, I believe that the anxiety that somebody experiences and all this stuff, I think it is actual physical damage that the brain has that we cannot see, perhaps we cannot even test for yet. Because if somebody has a broken leg, it is very easy to point and go, oh, he can't run a marathon. But if somebody has a broken brain, you cannot yell at that person constantly to stop being lazy. There's something wrong.
Right.
Because I am the most driven person that I know. My girlfriend will freaking attest. Like sometimes she like wants to spend time with me. I'm like, well, we could try. You know, like I do spend time with her. I just, you know, I do. But you know, sometimes I'm like, sweetheart, like I really gotta, you know, do da 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 da. But have you checked my calendar? Like we schedule time sometimes to hang out. If I can't overcome this crap, the people who are sitting around doing nothing and like maybe getting high all day on, you know, marijuana or something like that, and
Xanax,
just sitting around,
which is perfectly
right,
acceptable.
and they're self-medicating is where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And they have no money to throw at these problems to just keep finding a new solution. If I can't overcome this with super driven, like nothing's going to stop me, do whatever the fuck it takes to reach my fucking goals, like, well, what shot do other people have to function? They're just going to be called lazy or degenerates or this or that. And it's like, you know what? I think in a way everybody is trying to self-medicate themselves to function in a society that is overall inherently sick right now, regardless.
Completely.
With that said, I know it's a long rant, but I just really want to get this all out. With that said, My research, as I've gone through it and I have actively practiced at this point, is that psilocybin, for whatever reason, elicits a response from a neuroplasticity level that will actually grow or regrow or whatever the heck it does.
Yeah, rewire.
Your actual brain, but not rewire as in take this wire off, stick it over here, and now you're messed up. No, rewire as in, oh, this is a frayed cable trying to deliver a signal that is not working. Take that one out, and here's a new, I guess they're called dendrites of how the neurons interconnect and talk to one another. And it's almost like I feel like I'm getting a second chance at life. And here's the wildest part. I've tried experiments where I stopped taking it. I stopped taking it for weeks. And the results do not go back.
No.
The results appear to physically have altered this biochemical, I don't know, ability to produce serotonin and dopamine or whatever the heck, epinephrine. Like, I don't know. I don't know exactly what it does. I just know that even when I don't take it, my functionality appears to continue.
Yep.
And I don't want to say stop, but it appears that the healing has been done. You know, we'll say that the tires that were flat in the car have been changed. And then you can coast at that level.
Yeah, it changes your perspective on things, and that's really hard to go back on. Once you've seen the light and your perspective has changed from that negative to positive, like I always now, any situation, even if it's a flat tire or some stupid shit that would normally piss people off, I try to find the positive in everything.
You approach it from a standpoint of love.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Just find joy in the journey, and that's the most important thing, which goes back to the day when I got clean. The day I got clean, I was sitting on my dad's toilet in his house, and his shower curtain had all these affirmations in it, and the one that stuck out for me was find joy in the journey. And I didn't understand it until after I cut my leg off and started using psychedelics. Once I started using psychedelics and my perspective on things changed, I started to really understand that quote, find joy in the journey. And that's how I live my life now. That's what gets me through the bad times, is like, if something happens, I get a flat tire. Well, you know what? Maybe that's providing me an opportunity to talk to the tow truck driver who may be my next client. Or
yeah, it's so wild
you know
to have
I mean?
an outlook like that.
You
yeah.
just have to try to be like, listen, something good could come out of this. And instead of dwelling on the negativity and letting it ruin your day, it's just stupid. Just move past it. You can't control it. Figure it out and just go and like use it as fuel. You know what I mean? Like I use all my negative bullshit as fuel.
I call it toxic fuel.
I mean, I'm a high school dropout. I got kicked out the first day of my senior year. They let me put dropout on my record.
Solid.
Yeah. I'm a felon. I had my house raided in 2008 for fucking drugs, heroin, and all that stupid nonsense. So I'm a felon. I was addicted to heroin for 10 years straight, burned every bridge that you could possibly burn, probably twice. And I cut my leg off. So on paper, I'm not the greatest person. You know what I mean? But what I've done is this gave me a chance to press reset. And I pressed reset on my life, and I got to prove to everybody who the fuck I am now. You can't deny it. I get up, I go to work, I hustle, I stay physically fit, I'm kind to everybody, I am genuine. I make sure that's my first thing is if I say it, I'm going to do it. I don't ever leave people stranded. And I literally live my life from a point of love, and that's the most important thing. I try to go out of my way for people, and it just changes everything. It's so true that you get what you put out, and if you put out love, you're going to get love back. So even with the microdosing thing, I remember you thanking me. You're like, thank you so much. Like, I hope one day I can do something to repay you. And
dude, I think that was like in the first 2 or 3 weeks. I was like, listen, man, I have been fooled to thinking this works and that works and it placebo, like I said. And, you know, again, things would mitigate things, but like I'm sorry, it's not feasible for me to take a ice water bath every day. It's just not.
Yeah.
Like, I think that the changes that were most recognizable, I mean, nowadays I just marvel at my functionality. I'm like, wow, this was here the whole time. No shit. Like, because I think it just removes the shackles so that you could be who you want to be. Now, again,
It allows you to provide your full potential. You see your potential. You know, I mean,
and that's so frustrating for someone like me who sees what I can do, and I'm like, well, I'm
so
doing
then it
this.
lights that fire under your ass. I mean, and look at my life. I cut my leg off. This year will be 6 years in July, and I have accomplished more in the last 3.5 years than I accomplished the entire rest of my life. I bought a beautiful house. I have my dream car. I have an awesome relationship with all the people in my life. I rescued 2 handicapped dogs that we provide the best life for. Like, I have an awesome job that I created out of thin air. You know, like,
You got a clothing line you're launching based upon
I do, yeah. I have a clothing line that I'm launching based on my, basically the thing that helped me face my being an amputee. You know, I've been a martial artist, an acrobat. I love being out in nature, riding motorcycles. So when I woke up in the hospital, I was like, fuck, dude, what am I going to do with my life? Like, all of my hobbies or passions involve me using 2 legs. Like, I'm never going to do backflip again. I'm never going to do Muay Thai again, any of these things. And so when I got out of the hospital and I started to learn to walk again, I was just sitting there, and it was during that negative spiral. And I just came up with this piece of art, and it was the Grim Reaper walking away with my leg. And it was basically like the Grim Reaper came from my life. Like, I came as close as you can come to dying, and he left with just my leg. Like, I beat him. You know what I mean? So for me, it was like I could have died that day. I should have died that day probably, but I didn't. And I looked death in the face, and he only got to leave with my leg. So I got an awesome tattoo artist.
Can you show it?
To tattoo? Yeah, I probably can.
Yeah, you can keep talking. We can hear you. You won't be able to hear yourself, but we can hear you.
Yeah, so I had an awesome tattoo artist take my concept. I don't know, where's the camera that you want me to put it in?
This camera is looking straight at you. Yep. And so pull it back a little higher so that you can see the top.
Yeah.
So the scythe is there.
So my leg and his arm and his his So
one thing that we could do is before he leaves, you guys could do a little bit of like a pan with a camera, and we could just throw that up on the visual of his arm.
I could also
Yeah,
send you pictures
totally.
too if that works.
Yeah, man.
You know
We
what I
can do
mean?
that.
Yeah, I mean,
We can do that.
yeah, we'll get it.
Yeah. But so you took that, you created a icon, a logo of sorts.
Right.
Put it on your arm, and now you're launching a clothing line with it for effectively amputees who want to be
this
empowered
was like a
more.
big fuel for me just to be like, to face it, and accept like for before I had this for like that year, you're still waking up in the middle of the night looking at your reflection in the mirror, and you're like, fuck, what the fuck is that? Like,
Can I just step in real quick?
Yeah.
This is what nobody sees.
Yeah.
Everybody sees the stories of you being functional now without the leg, and you are effectively launching a lifestyle brand. They see me in the car I have with the businesses I have, and they see that. They don't see the closed door stuff.
yeah,
They don't see
The
you
journey.
looking in the mirror,
yeah.
feeling completely done, and just wanting to just, I don't know, end it all, or just like there's no point, like I can't ride a motorcycle, I can't do this, I can't do that.
But perspective again, right?
Uh-huh.
So find joy in that. Like, that all sucked to go through, but all of that formed me. I'm a ball of clay, right? So it formed me into who I am right now. So that's where the perspective comes in. It's like that journey, I wouldn't be here, dude. I've told you this a million times. 10 years ago, you would not want to have a conversation with
You've
me.
always said that to me.
I was
I didn't know
a
you 10
cocky
years
piece
ago.
of shit. And like,
Well, you're still cocky.
yeah, yeah, I'm less of a piece of shit though. So I'm getting
That's good.
somewhere,
That's good. Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, but like it has allowed me to use all of the bullshit that comes my way as fuel. And it's like, everybody in my past, I'm sure at one point or another has been surprised that I'm still fucking alive. So, all these people that probably hated me 10 years ago, now I get to show that I'm not such a piece of shit. You know what I mean? And like, it was the grip of addiction that completely manipulated my brain to being somebody who I'm not.
Right.
And this has given me a chance to fix my brain, find out who I am, live up to my potential. And so, yeah, I took this brand, and then my boss built us an awesome office. So I had the tattoo artist do a full painting with much more detail, the background, the crashed motorcycle, the mile marker that cut my leg off.
I need to see this.
Yeah, and I had him paint that for above my office chair. And then I was like, you know what? every time I'm in amputee group or something and I show this art, it resonates with these people. They're like, holy shit, like, you're right. That, like, we should be dead. You know, the whatever disease I had to lose my leg to, diabetes, or the accident that, or someone, you know, a veteran stepped on a mine, blew his leg off. Like, he should be dead, but he beat the Grim Reaper, so it resonates with them. And I paid that same artist to draw me up a pencil sketch that I'm going to vectorize and make it digital, and we're going to print some shirts and launch that next week. So it's called One Foot in the Grave.
I love
Will
it.
be the brand name. Yeah.
1 foot in the grave. Have you trademarked that or anything?
I haven't, but
Get on that. We can't put this out.
So
Cut that out. No, I'm just kidding.
no, with a
the
T-shirt
grave.
line, I guess, you know, this conversation is enough of property. So
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
that's how it works. I guess you don't have to license any T-shirt brand. As soon as you print it, that's your right there.
I actually did a photo shoot, side note, with an up-and-coming clothing line. Not for me, for him, literally. And, I mean, if you want me to connect you, he could tell you how he's doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the more direction, the better. This is all. I just figure shit out as I go along, and I would love to have some wisdom to help make it easier along the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm excited. I think it'll be cool. Even if it could just motivate, just that picture can motivate one amputee to push through, because those first 2 weeks in the hospital, man, those are when it gets tough, because
that's the dark stuff
Yeah,
no
you
one
don't-
sees.
yeah.
That's why this is encouraging.
you don't see like what, you live your day-to-day life. You don't see amputees doing cool shit. You have to search for that stuff.
Right.
So
Okay.
luckily my girlfriend is a circus coach and an acrobat. So
That must be fun.
Yeah. Contortionist.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and she found me this kid, AJ Montgomery, who was in the Cirque du Soleil. It was actually not the Cirque du Soleil. There's another big one in Vegas, and he was in Vegas, and he had lost his leg in a motorcycle accident. He actually broke it, and they decided to cut it off like 6 months later because it wasn't working. And he went and tried out as an amputee in Cirque du Soleil and got accepted. And so I saw videos of him doing big back tucks and all this crazy shit. I'm like, that's a person that could do it. I could do it, right?
Yeah.
So that was my thing. All I wanted to do was backflip again, which I have accomplished. And I did martial arts and all this other stuff. And just real quick, I'm going to go down another little sideline. I have 2 handicapped dogs. One of them who is Instagram famous. Plug, Tonka's Journey. But so he's
Tonka's Journey.
Tonka's Journey.
Tonka?
Yeah, like Tonka Truck.
Yeah.
Tonka's _journey on Instagram.
Nice.
He's got almost 50,000 followers, and he does the same thing. He motivates people, and we try to use his life to help people, give a chance to old and disabled dogs. But one of the cool things is he's on the Dodo. He's got like 16 million views on his story from when
Really?
he was a puppy and overcoming all his obstacles. And he's done it with such a smile on his face this whole time. Like, I came into his life when he was probably a little under a year, and I had 2 legs, so I didn't appreciate it at the time. But then once I lost my leg, and it's the 2 of us figuring out how to live a normal life disabled, like the smile that he pushed through all the surgeries and all the pain he's in all the time, and how he just loves life, was such an inspiration to me. And so one of the end goals that I would love to do, here's another trademark coming, is I want to write a children's book called Keep On Truckin' by Tonka's Journey. And it's going to be the story of the 2 of us overcoming our disabilities and just living the best lives. And I can go around to children's hospitals with kids with these new diagnoses and show them myself doing flips, and show them this dog just chugging along and being happy, being disabled, And I feel like those are those beginning moments. If we can get rid of that negative spiral and turn it into something positive and put a smile on these kids' face, it could literally change the next year of their outlook. So that's one thing that we really want to do. Tonka's getting old. He's 7 years old now. But I always wanted to be able to take him to the hospital and like hand books. Ooh, my bad, people. Hand books out. I thought it'd be really cool. So that's also one of the end goals here with this, trying to take this negative thing that happened to me and turn it into a blessing, not from only myself, but other people, The experience is everything, and being able to just take it and motivate you and push through, that's what people need to see.
And so for this, I also want to kind of tie this back to the other concept that I want to cover on here, which I'm just going to title like superhuman. So what you are doing and all the stuff of which you're undertaking on top of having a job, on top of having a son, on top of taking in 2 dogs, on top of this, on top of that, you're launching effectively and running a company. You are effectively launching 2 different brands at the same time, talking about writing a children's book, talking about traveling around and doing all this stuff. To a lot of people, you're effectively superhuman right now. And, tying this right back to the microdosing, with the neuroplastic side of it, something that I found fascinating is that if you really sit down and think about it, a lot of people have the ideas of which you're talking about. Everybody wants to do something with their lives. People don't want to live a life of regret, though that does seem to be what massive amounts of the population do live in. But one of the things that would probably get them to a point of which can actually function at the standards of which they would like to, or do the things in life that they actually dream about, would be removing the roadblocks. And we could talk all day about removing, Facebook from distracting, stopping you from doing what you want to do, because it's a roadblock. It sucks up your time. You could talk about removing these toxic people from your life, removing this, removing that. But what about all the stuff inside of you that effectively stops you from moving towards who you want to be? For me, it seems to be that microdosing has removed those roadblocks, and now this stuff is building. But with my research and everything showing that the physical constructs of the mind can actually be altered and changed through this method, I just want to share something of which I'm doing that I'm going to say, you and I have this conversation about. Is it possible to become superhuman if you actively use psychedelics, not just necessarily as a medicinal standpoint to get yourself to a point of which you heal yourself, but also to be used as a springboard to effectively, I guess we could say rewire, but use it as a springboard to give yourself the attributes of which you are lacking at a super physiological speed. And what I mean by this is this. If indeed neuroplasticity exists, which it does, and there is a window that gets opened every single time that you take, and for me, again, microdosing is all I'm working with. Well, for me, I noticed, even when I took a little bit larger amounts, that it appeared that the window began to open about an hour out of when I would start to experience effects. So again, this is all anecdotal, but for me, I was like, okay, well, if I start to experience some form of the psychedelic effects of like the brightening of things and the more in tune with stuff, well, that probably means that this is now active in the brain with the dendrites, right? So one thing that I had mentioned to you, going back to superhuman, is this. What if you want to learn something at an accelerated rate and you want to change who you are, instead of just trying to think on it and instead of trying to just give yourself reminders and read books and all that, what if you did this while under a ability to have new cellular tissue in its developmental stages being focused on exactly what you want to become? So I took this into thought with the anxiety originally. So about an hour after I would microdose, I would go into a meditation for calmness, or listen to really calm stuff, or anti-anxiety, or a guided meditation where you, it's like a body scan, you scan parts of your body, and just like sitting there, like leaned against my wall or laying in bed, and I would put myself in an extremely calming environment. The reason behind this is my hypothesis was, if indeed I'm building new brain tissue and it's in the developmental stages, and I likened it to like a child who, when they're born, they just listen, they just absorb.
Yep.
Well, if I'm growing new tissue, whether it sounds kooky or not, I was like, well, it's kind of like having new children's cells, new developmental cells, tissue being built. What if their entire experience during their development is that everything is calm in my life, and everything is relaxed, and everything is this, and everything is that? I did this multiple times. The accelerated rate at which I became a much more relaxed and calm person was vastly improved very quickly And I think I would probably say within about 2.5 to 3 months of doing microdosing, suddenly I was just able to handle stupid amounts of stress way beyond what I had experienced before. But what if you could apply that elsewhere? And that's what I started to do. So now, when I do a microdose, I will actively choose what is the next stimulus that I'm going to introduce to my experience, my human experience. What's the next stimulus? So if I want to learn something, I'm going to read that book while on a microdose, and I feel that I absorb the information better, and I also are able to grow in that area. So if I take it and I go to the gym, I am reinforcing that, I go to the gym and I'm bodybuilding and I'm, into fitness and I'm growing and all I think about is fitness. Well, that seems to bleed into just little decisions about what I pick up at the supermarket or whatever. It appears to go into how much I mind-muscle connect, if you will, while I'm there. And I look at this almost like a reinforcement ability to anything of which you want to become. Whether you want to learn about, like, I bet on the UFC every Saturday. I've talked to you about this. Well, I track all of the data, and I make money typically every Saturday. Sometimes I lose, but for the most part, I'm making money doing it because I've created like a mathematical algorithm, if you will, that's a play off the Martingale strategy and allows me to look at the odds and look at, certain statistical stuff that I have over the past 5 years. But if I do that on a microdose, by looking at that,
my stomach just growled. I wasn't sure.
Did it really?
Yeah.
It came through a microphone?
I don't know.
I think it
I
did.
think I heard it. I think I heard it. Thank you very much. Do you want some food? But looking at that data allows me to be fully immersed in it, and perhaps I start to notice things because from a cognitive standpoint, I am now in a place of vastly more open levels of learning, if you will. Mm-hmm. And I will notice things of the data perhaps I didn't know, but I am teaching myself this is what we need to be good at. Kind of like when I was young, I used to run around constantly. My calves are crazy developed. And everybody asks me at the gym, they're like, dude, how? How do your calves? I don't work my calves. I don't do anything nowadays. It's partially genetics, but dude, when I was a kid, I ran everywhere. I did everything. So during my developmental time, I probably I did track, I did kick the can because, we were kind of broke when, whatever. Like, so I would get a can or a Gatorade bottle and we'd play like soccer with it in a way, like with the kids.
Yeah. I lived that kick the can life.
Yeah, man, that was all about that. But my calves got crazy developed from doing so. So I apply that same ideology to this microdosing stuff because if indeed that's the time when the cellular tissue is being built, well then you know what? Who did you want to be? Like, if you're trying to learn a new task, like, I'm just going to take wheeling because I do stunting on, like, quads and stuff. If you want to learn to wheelie and you want to do all this stuff, if indeed that developmental tissue is only experiencing and apply this to wherever you want in your life metaphorically, but, like, if you want to learn to be better at anything from wheeling to artistry to this to that, I mean, how many artists, and I'm talking, like, music artists, or people like Steve Jobs, how many super successful people like actually specifically say this psychedelic is massively responsible for my success and where these ideas came from? So many of them.
Especially billionaires. Like LSD has created
that. Yeah.
So many billionaires. They all are like, hey, I was a bum until I took some acid and it opened up my mind and poof.
Right.
Like, it's just, I mean, I think psychedelics are such a tool for manifestation. I feel like it's like an amplifier. If you dwell on a thought and then you all of a sudden go so much deeper inside your head on that thought, using this as an antenna, it allows you to project these manifestations that they just happen. You just speak things into existence, and it's crazy because I used to listen to people say that. I'm like, yeah, well, you're just fucking lucky or whatever. But if you lead your life by love and you put good energy out and you use these things as a tool and you use them properly, the possibilities are endless, and I'm the perfect example. You know what I mean? Like,
So, like, a question to go a little bit deeper with things. You have experienced entities, right? Because you've done copious levels of certain psychedelics.
oh yeah, pretty much all of them.
So, all right. So, for you, if indeed, okay, so just a question here. So I'm doing like little baby stuff, right? Little baby blocks, and I'm going to play with my little baby blocks for quite a while because I'm just not prepared for certain things. But do you think, because you said antenna, do you think from all of your experiences and such, some of my research suggests that all of which we experience on psychedelics is actually not necessarily tapping into another frequency elsewhere in entities or aliens or whatever the machine elves and such of which people experience on higher levels. What I have come across has stated that nobody, and maybe this is not correct, but what I have found says that nobody ever comes back with knowledge that was not already necessarily in their brain to begin with. Now, my question, do you believe that we are tapping into higher or lower or whatever dimensional frequencies, and then via the use of psychedelics, it opens up our brain like an antenna and allows us to get into these other realms, if you will, and interact with these other entities, and on maybe baby levels like me, perhaps remove certain roadblocks and brings in the help of others? Because I will say there was a day I did more of the microdoses, and then I kind of laid down, and I felt like there was something watching over me, taking care of me, telling me everything's going to be fine, I'm going to be good, like we're going to work on you. And I had all of these inner moments of experiencing like these massively fast visuals going through my brain while I'm laying down. And one of them was I saw myself from a third-person perspective in a cave, because I was always looking for confidence, like in life. I was always trying to feel confident in whatever I was doing. And I saw this man who was me, who was in a cave. He had spent his entire life trying to get this cave, and there's this jewel, there's this thing he's digging for. And as he's banging away, as I am banging away in this cave, I finally break through and I reach in, and there's nothing there. The jewel of which I had been seeking my entire life, the confidence, the I don't know, masculinity, the who I actually wanted to be, it was contained within this jewel. Breaking through, it's not there. Immediately, I am transported into a room, if you will, and it's like a semicircle, like all these different entities, I'm going to say, or I don't know if gods, I don't know what they were, and they were all pointing at me in the center, and I didn't hear any voices, I didn't hear any words, but what came to me was a thought that basically said, I am what I've been looking for my entire life. That jewel that I've been seeking exogenously outside of me is actually inside of me. It's been there the entire time. But it's breaking through the caverns of the caves of the mind, if you will, and the journey to become what I was looking for, that exogenous jewel, the journey to get there is what made me into the man of which I am. And that became heavily imprinted on me from that day on. My confidence effectively was way up and has remained so. I still have doubtful moments, but my confidence has vastly improved. Do you believe, which is my question, do you believe that when you take psychedelics, you are getting outside of yourself influences that are interdimensional or different frequency, or do you believe that it is actually a window within the self? And I know there could be bleed over, but is there a window into the self where you cannot actually learn anything of which is not actually within you already, just not delved as deep into, and these entities are literally figments of our imagination that are interacting with us within ourselves, which would make sense why we cannot come back with anything that is actually new material. It is stuff of which is actually contained with us already. Which one is it in your opinion?
Yeah, well, that's like the toughest question ever. But
this is still on, right?
Yeah.
It better be.
Yeah, yeah, it's blinking.
All right.
Like every other psychedelic ever, I would say maybe it's within yourself. But when you do DMT at a deep level, it's so hard to ignore what you see.
I have zero
I could agree with
experience.
that. I mean, like, I've definitely used LSD and psilocybin as a tool. Like, I'm a fire performer, and like, I probably wouldn't know half the stuff I know and do if it weren't for me just spending hours learning and flowing with my props, like while tripping. But DMT is just a whole different animal. It's that would definitely be the out of body experience you hear
It's
about.
like Avatar, man. It's like every time that when I've done a big dose, it's like you go right past a certain point and you're just in this experience that is just so consuming. It's just mind-boggling. But if you do like a little bit less than that, you can feel it's like you're torn between the two frequencies or two universes. Like I've had an experience where I hit it once and I'm whoa, but it was like I wasn't over the threshold, and basically it felt like the entities were looking down at me going, oh my God, he's almost here, and it was convincing me to go take another hit so I can get over that. It was like they were waiting for me. And then as soon as I took that hit, it was like they celebrated, like, he's here, yes. And I'm in that experience. And that's so hard to put into words, but it's so hard to deny. Like mushrooms, ketamine, low doses of LSD, because I've told you the story about my high dose on LSD. I took 12 tabs of acid. Definitely entity or God or whoever the fuck was there with me. There was definitely something. But every other psychedelic, like I think it's much more in your own brain. You're dealing with
introspection,
the baggage that you've brought your whole life, the shows you've watched, the math you've learned, it's all there. DMT is you're either blasted to a fucking other frequency, a UFO, whatever, the mothership. You're there with other energies.
But like, what do you see? What is that? I've never experienced.
I mean,
what are you experiencing?
I've told you about that site Arrowwood.
Arrowwood's good.
Arrowwood is good.
Arrowwood is very good. I've told you about, but so like
that's the OG site like for a fucking
place where people share experiences, and there's pages and pages and
of like any drug you can think of people writing down what they did and how they felt, what they saw.
Okay.
So like there's a lot of similarities between a lot of stories, but then there's also a lot of things that are very personal within those similarities.
Right. I think the best way I've been able to put it into words before is like if you take 100 people and you put them on mushrooms, and then you ask them their story after, you're going to get
different stories.
You're going to get some similar experiences, but everyone's going to have kind of their own story. Same with like acid, it starts to get closer to, more replicable as you take, you put more people. But DMT is like, you're going to get 95% of those people to all say they experienced very close to the same fucking experience. The math you've never seen.
Real quick, is that in close proximity to one another, or that is around the world?
That's actually around the world. That's around the world. So there's actually
I just didn't know if it's like a test where like they all do it together.
Well, with the world we have now, there's actually a lot of new testing being done. So I've been listening to a lot of Graham Hancock books. I'm listening to Magicians of the Gods right now, and he touches base on that. He goes into it a lot more in his other books. But like I've also been listening to Forbidden Frontier, another podcast, and they dive into some of that stuff as well. But there's a lot of new research being done, especially on psilocybin because states are legalizing it and allowing it for use.
Maps.
But like DMTs, there's already been worldwide, research done across DMT to figure out is it just like a trip where or a state of consciousness that everyone kind of has subliminally, or is it actually bridging a gap somewhere and we're actually viewing some other realm or frequency that is adjacent to us?
You and I were talking about it earlier. It has gone. It's such a replicable experience that the data shows that now studies are being done where they're hooking them up to an hour-long drip of DMT and trying to map the realm. So they're hooking people up to DMT.
Yeah, it's getting...
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Wait, so effectively, you hook somebody up to a DMT drip that is long so they can come back with the experience much more solidified in their mind.
So, like, when DMT was originated, it was done in the Amazon, and it was via ayahuasca.
Right.
And the Amazonians somehow knew the correct, potion to make out of the rainforest.
Which is insane.
And they would pick out these, X amount of herbs and plants and concoct it.
MAOI inhibitor mixed with dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah, but see, I say here, I'm like, where did that come from? Like, I'm
Nobody
somebody
knows.
who
Where did
believes
that
in
come
like
from? Exactly.
massively
Exactly.
lost civilizations
Exactly.
Yeah.
multiple times throughout human history.
That's just like 5-MeO-DMT. Like, who decided to secrete a gland on a toad and smoke that to find the strongest psychedelic? Who the fuck did that?
As some guy named Phil.
It may be.
But like, I'm somebody who believes that like we've had massively lost multiple civilizations throughout history.
yeah. Absolutely.
Part of me wonders with the advent of artificial intelligence if we may become one of those, and that's something we'll get to. But
100%.
I hope not, man. But I look at that and then I go, well, I also look at the cosmos, right? If you've ever actually seen a photo of the known universe, let's just take a photo. I remember as a kid I saw this. Like, let's take a photo. It's like this large. It was a massive poster. Earth is this. And I was like, if you don't think there's aliens, bro.
Earth is this just inside of our own galaxy.
I don't, yes,
There's
but what I'm
galaxies
saying
and
is there's
galaxies
like
and galaxies.
feasibly.
Yeah, we're a speck of dust.
I don't
Not
know
even.
what to say about these galaxies.
Yeah.
And the vast sheer amount of space in between everything of which we know about, which we are probably massively painfully ignorant. If you then take the possibility that overlapping everything we've even feasibly thought of is multiple frequencies and multiple dimensions, on top of which these slices of the onion, if you will, or the multiverse theory, or like, you put this all together, I mean, anybody who thinks they're intelligent, it just is laughable to me. There's people who are intelligent as opposed to other people in life. There's nobody who's intelligent that we've ever met on this planet. There's no possibility. We are infants at best.
Yeah.
We,
That's why people like Nikola Tesla. I mean, somebody's like him. You got to think about it back.
and he's dumb compared to what I'm describing of what the
Right.
cosmos is there to
Yeah,
know.
But like, he
That's why I never went to Hartford. Hartford
took a
Harvard. Oh my God! See, that's
Harvard.
why I
Yeah.
didn't go.
You wanna
That's why
go
I
to
didn't go, bro.
yeah, have a podcast about drugs.
have-
Of course,
I have-
Hartford has to come up.
Of course. No, man. I'm just saying, like I'm just way too much of a free thinker to work into like secular society. I don't do well in normal society. People are like, oh yeah, you need a small talk. I'm like, so what do you think of the cosmos?
Yeah, you're telling me. Yeah, I get yelled at everywhere I go because
can't
I'm just so
function in
open
society.
about my life. I go to like my kid's baseball game and I'm sitting there talking to the dad next to me about DMT. I got people like, hey, you can't talk about that. I'm like, well, fucking arrest
Yeah,
me.
well, you're
I don't know.
boring.
Yeah. What do you want me to do? It's like, you live a normal life and then you smoke DMT and then you're just like, fuck. Nothing has ever in my entire life has
Made
in
sense.
the 8 minutes that I was high, it was like 15 lifetimes of experiences. Like
It's the most
just
influential 8 minutes of your life.
the
Like,
most.
Yeah,
You know
see,
what
it's
I
like
mean?
I would love to experience this. There's just this massive inner fear, especially what happens on the other stuff.
I've done
with
it
me.
a dozen times, and there's a massive inner fear every time I fucking do it.
yeah, I mean,
Every time.
When I first discovered it, like, a friend of mine showed it to me, and then he was all, hey, come over, let's make it. I was all like,
yeah, no.
whoa,
That's a
dude.
beautiful thing, though.
It was a very beautiful
That's a
thing,
beautiful
and
thing.
like I was never one to like. I mean, don't get me wrong. I was young, and I definitely
Dude, I
liked
feel
to
so
party.
ignorant. Everybody knows so much about stuff, and I'm just sitting here like, I'm trying to
you
learn.
don't know till you know, bro.
Yeah,
That's
like,
it.
But I was young, and I just like liked to party, but like I was really into psychedelics, and like I had really good parents and good life and good upbringing. So like I got, I mean, little. to
So
no
what
problem.
happened? No, I'm just kidding.
So like when he showed it to me, we ended up with like 4 grams of this just pure white crystally awesomeness, and I was just like, wow. And we tried it, and it was amazing. And I was like, I just went around showing everybody. I was like, yo, you gotta try this.
Me too.
You gotta
bro.
try this. And
Yeah.
I was just
Everybody, hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. My
Well,
friends
like-
were like, shut the fuck up, bro. Like,
well,
I'm
like
not
most
there.
of my friends were like willing to, but they were like,
Yeah.
yo, you gotta do it with me. So I was like, so I feel like I ended up abusing it.
Yeah.
Just by being excited about it, and like, so I like did that for like a month, and I was doing it multiple times a day, and I was like, wow, this is getting crazy. And then like I had a bad experience.
Yeah, it'll kick you out.
Oh,
like
it
it
kicked me
won't
out.
allow you to keep doing it. Like
No.
it doesn't let you abuse it. It'll make it fucking terrifying. Is what
yeah,
I've
no.
heard. I haven't been there. But,
Don't.
Yeah. No, I do it like so I haven't done it since my birthday when I turned 38. So I'm 37. So it's been like over a year already. And I like I said, I sacrifice to it. I go on a diet for a month before I eat so healthy, and I try to make sure that I show it that I appreciate it. You
See,
know what
I
mean?
really maybe want to try and take a page from that book because like I really enjoyed it.
Full moon, bro.
It
Do
was-
it on a full moon always.
It was I had really great experiences, and I really enjoyed showing it to people, and like, but like since the bad experience, I've tried it a couple of times, but like that bad experience was probably 10 years ago. I've maybe tried it a few more times. I had good experiences, but I didn't go deep.
Yeah.
I just like, touched the surface and got that buzz and was like, oh, I like kind of want to, but like was really, especially the first couple of times, I was like, I don't want to push.
Yeah.
It's like
Once you have that
I like
really-
had to fight for a piece of my soul.
That terrifying bad trip. It's something that never goes away. It's like one of those, and so again, perspective. I don't like to call them bad trips because you can get so much knowledge out of them, for yourself. For just usually they stir up things that you don't like about yourself, and they bring it to the forefront, and you just spiral out of control. But those can be
We
beneficial.
can hear
to you.
that like massively out here, buddy.
I totally forgot that we're unmuted.
So, I touched on it earlier, but so when I was using, people would be like, hey, I got this, let's do this. I got this. So a friend of mine who was a giant drug dealer, he's now passed away, but he gave me a sheet of LSD, and I had done it a few times, smaller doses, and had a blast. And then one night my friend's like, hey, we're going to Yukon. It's going to be a Mexican theme party. Let's, my friend lived up there. Let's take some acid. I was like, fuck it. Let's go hard. I want to see what this shit's about.
Oh boy.
So I took 7 tabs and I ate it. And we lived in Clinton, so we drove from Clinton to Stores. And in that, like, things were starting to get a little bit of, streaky lights as I'm driving. It was nighttime. And I was like, you know what? I don't feel like 7 tabs. I feel like 7 tabs, I should be tripping balls already. So I was like, I'm going to eat 5 more.
Oh my God.
And I ate 5 more. And again, I was doing opiates regularly. So like, it's hard. I don't even remember. I don't know if I was on something that night as well as the LSD, or I was withdrawing from being on something for the night before, but I for sure had opiates in my system. My body was not taken care of. I was not living a healthy lifestyle at that point. So already all the things are stacked against me. And, the first hour of it, when it fucking hit, and I'm having a fun LSD trip. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is so cool. And then you go outside and you meet strangers and you're just like, oh my God, what is that guy really making that face at me? Whatever. So I was dating this girl at the time, and my good friend who took the LSD with me, he knows I hate fucking like the exorcism movies, and I watched The Exorcism of Emily Rose like the week before, and he goes, doesn't April look like Emily Rose? As I'm tripping balls on 12 tabs of acid, and I look over, I'm like,
Dude.
oh.
Dude.
And it was like she was going to eat my fucking soul. So
See, this is why I
just
don't do these things.
started going down.
I
right?
like
and,
chips.
And
he
that
likes
wasn't
tabs of acid.
Well,
that
this is
wasn't-
where we learn to control our environment.
Exactly. And that wasn't even the worst of it. So that was just, things just started going. And then I'm looking around the room. Everybody's making weird faces at me. And I'm just like, ah. So I run into a spare bedroom and lock myself in the room. And unfortunately for me, the room that I decided to lock myself into, they had sponge dab painted the walls with purple paint everywhere. Just dabs. Each one of those dabs had a personality. And I'm just in the room talking to these. They're talking to me all night long. And I'm just like, what the fuck? So I ended up shutting the light off. And I had a trip with God, who was a black gentleman.
Of course.
He was black.
Morgan Freeman?
It sounded just like him. I swear to God, it's not even an exaggeration. But he was sitting at an old operator switchboard, the ones that they would unplug and plug into whatever, and he was just over and over again would be like, or I can kill you like this, and it was just scenario after scenario after scenario of my family crying over me, shot in a parking lot, or just every type of scenario of a way that you could fucking die was just on repeat all night long.
So like it was effectively like your lifeline. He would pull it out, stick it into a new way to die.
Yep.
Be like, nope, that's not good. And you would experience.
Yeah.
Would you experience it?
It was just like the last blip. It'd be like as I'm taking my last breath, watching my whole family cry and mourn over my death, and like it was torture. It was fucking torture.
That's brutal.
Yeah, and like for a decade, I was terrified of psychedelics. I was like, I don't want a mushroom. I don't want ecstasy. I don't want fucking anything. I stuck with my fucking dope, and I hit it hard. And I didn't do a psychedelic until that night where I took that 0.8 capsule.
Real quick, that's literally, totally different story of what happened to myself. But on the 1 gram, for me, experience, as scary as that, but, possibly more, we'll call it lasting implications if I had gone through some of the stuff that I thought was real at the time. And it's like scared me away currently.
Yeah. That was 14 hours of just like no reality other than the LSD trip. Like
Wow.
There was no coherent conversation being had with other people. I was terrified of humans, and I was terrified of leaving that room for 14 fucking hours straight. It was brutal torture, man. The next day I was like, I just looked at everything and everybody with such distrust. I was like, what the fuck?
Well, I think also like when you see beyond the fabric of time, I guess, time, space, whatever it is that we exist in, this three-dimensional reality that, I've heard people talk about time, that it's a construct and such, and I've looked into that a little bit. But like when you see beyond the veil, I think no matter what, it makes you question all of what is reality, all of what you actually know as real. And it also makes you question why you would drink so much liquids before coming down here, because my bladder's about to explode.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break,
Go for it.
and then we will
Yeah,
reconvene.
we're right up on 2 hours, so we're good. We're doing really good.
Yeah, man. So I'm going to pee. I'll be
Go
back.
pee.